right, you guys, it's episode 86 of Inner Demons, and without further ado, I'm going to get straight to it. So real quick, I just knocked out a video for you guys, which is basically a profile on Stork from Salinas. I'm going to try to get in a quick Inner Demons for you guys. Again, I try not to lag on this series right here because I know a lot of you are into it, and I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody that's tapping in, everybody that's interested in Inner Demons, or you guys that are watching this series. So anyways, let me get into it. So I told you guys about the last episode. This was the second time that these guys dropped the hammer on me. Basically, when that happened, I knew that this had ran its full course, that leadership was involved, that just based on the individuals that were there in Second East with me. There was an active NF member down there. Dancing Bear was obviously there. He was part of the reason why I was able to come back. He helped get me out of that situation I was in, the first time. Now here's a second situation that happens. He's on the tier with me. So I basically know that this is a dead issue. I told you guys that the Bay was involved. Dancing Bear had submitted an investigation to Chuco, and Chuco was on board with it. It was good to be back amongst the homies, and it was a morale booster, something that I needed. But at the same time, this right here, this came as a huge blow. I'm sure you guys can understand that. Coming out of that situation, coming back, being on an active tier, it's been like almost 2 years. Everything is, it looks like everything is okay, at least for the time being. And then this happens. I'm not going to lie. It was a huge morale killer. When that happened, I'm not going to go into the details again, but, the way that I walked down the tier, looked in the cells, tried to make eye contact with some of the homies and was like, damn, bro, this is what we're doing, huh? So I guess Lencho won this fight. And this isn't always just about Lencho. I probably make him more important or seem more important than what he really is, because although he's the one in the cuts that is kind of like pushing all these buttons and are kind of making things happen, Lencho is just not this powerful individual. So don't get it misconstrued what I'm saying. But he's the one that had an agenda. He is an NF member, so he does have, a level of influence. And, he played those politics. He played them right at that point. If that's what his agenda was, is to get me tripped up and in bad standings, then he shot that. He did it because that's what happened. So, I told you guys how I considered that the walk of shame. So I get back to observation cell. I clean the cell. I told you guys I became a compulsive cell cleaner. That's what time does to you. Out here, it's more on me on the streets as well. I got OCD. I'm constantly cleaning. But anyway, so I clean the cell, and, I go through this phase. It's probably about a good 2 or 3 week phase that I'm going through now, where I'm just like, I'm going over everything that happened. Like, where did I go wrong at? How did this happen? Is it something that I did on the tier? Was there something that I did to kind of push this along? Was there something somebody else did? I honestly didn't know. I knew that Lencho was always pushing that agenda, but he could only do so much. So I was wondering, like, damn, where'd this come from? Did it come from the Bay itself? Was this a decision that they made, for some reason? Is it based off of a false impression? What is it? Or is it just based off the fact that the phone calls themselves? I've never denied the fact that it could just be based on the phone calls. If that was the reason why, and it was clearly like, you know what, we don't talk like this. This is what you shouldn't have said. You know better. This is why. It's not because you fell under a cloud of suspicion. It's not because we think you might have. It's not because we got anything that says you sat down with anybody. It's the fact that you said what you said. That in itself was enough betrayal for us to make a decision to drop the hammer on you. And that's what it is. If those would have been the reasons why, I would have to accept that. I've always said that. If it was just based on that, then okay, that's a hard line to push. But if those were the reasons why, and the organization made those choices for those reasons, then I would have had to have accepted it for what it was, straight up. I knew that there was that possibility that that alone could have been enough. So, I went into this mode where I took out my iPod, and for like a good 2 or 3 weeks, I continuously listened to the phone calls. I listened to them over and over. And the more I listened to them, the more of a funk it put me back in that funk, back in that old place when I was down there in Area 51. The first time I got my iPod and I listened to those calls, and I tried to really, I was like, you know what, I'm going to listen to these calls and I'm going to take myself completely out of it. And I'm going to listen to them and base a decision, off of as if I was listening to somebody else. And I'm really going to, make a fair decision. If I think that there's not enough in here, to deem me, then that's what I'm going to conclude. If I think that there's enough, then it is what it is. I listen to the calls, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. Listening to the calls, I got discouraged because I was like, you know what? That's bad. It's bad. It's bad to hear myself talking like that. But I knew that anybody that would have listened to him would have said the same thing. And again, even though I didn't talk to anybody, it never went beyond that point. It was just the fact that I was talking about doing it. And I've always said that I knew better, and I've owned that. I've always owned that. I've never tried to justify it. The only thing I have said that people might take as any kind of justification is that other homeboys have talked to their ladies like that, straight up. I'd be lying to myself if I didn't, if I didn't admit that and I didn't say that I knew that. There's homeboys that do it all the time. Whatever they got to tell their girl, and I mean, you got some cupcakes, straight cupcake ass motherfucker. What I said is one thing, but I know you got some cats that when it comes to their ladies, they just cry and cry about, their lady this, their lady that. They stress over their everything that happens. So I can imagine you got cats telling their ladies they'll move mountains and do whatever they got to do to come home to them. So, I knew that. But again, my situation got put on blast. That's a common thread, ain't it? True, man. So, I knew that. But, I had to be honest with myself, man. I had to put everything in perspective because I was in a position now to where I had to make some tough choices. There were, things had to happen from that point on. There I was, I was in this situation now. This is the situation. I'm either gonna allow myself to go through trial, knowing that I'm gonna blow trial. They're gonna sink my ass. They're gonna make an example out of me. They're gonna give me that full 155, 185 life, whatever it was. They're gonna give it to me. I'm gonna get that. Every last one of them gang enhancements, all that shit's gonna stick. There's no doubt about it. I tell you guys, they thought I was like just responsible for everything over there in San Jose. And even though I had beat them at several points along the way, those motions, and who knows what could happen, I don't know. But even though I was beating them like that, they still wasn't good. They still weren't willing to dump a case like that. There was just too much. There was too much politics involved. I was too high profile. It was an NF case, and they were trying to say I was too involved in too much stuff out there. And I'm not trying to downplay my involvement. I know there's so you guys are very critical, which is cool. That's okay. I got thick skin. Trust me. This is something I've developed over time. It's like elephant skin. But I'm not downplaying the things that I've done over the years. I've been involved in a lot of dirt. There's a lot of things that I've done. I've hurt people. I've been involved in just a lot of stuff. And I know myself, just like there should be a lot of you that will probably admit, those of you that have been involved in the criminal element, I'm sure you'll say, you know what, I got involved in so much shit over the years that I should be doing life in prison. If I was really to get hemmed up for everything that I done out there, I would be a done deal, stick a fork in them. You know what I mean? So, I'm not downplaying what I used to do out there in the streets, my level of involvement. I was deep in the mix. I was definitely involved in a lot of shit. I had my hands in a lot of shit, but it wasn't on the level that they were trying to, put me on. Like, I just wasn't responsible for everything that happened in Northern California. I just wasn't that big. You know what I mean? Anyway, so, I had to ask myself at that time, what am I going to do in this situation? It's a tough situation to be in. Again, I don't even like talking about it. But when your life is hanging in the balance and you're looking at all this time, for some people, self-preservation will kick in. For me, it wasn't self-preservation because I wasn't trying to think about saving myself. That's not what it was about at that point. If it was, think about it. Common sense will tell anybody that's watching this. If it was about self-preservation, that shit would have kicked in 2004. As soon as they put the cuffs on me, I would have started singing like a bird right there. But it wasn't about that. I was always one of them kind of dudes. And I can tell you guys, look you right in the eyes and tell you this. I was one of those type of dudes that I knew what I got myself involved in. I didn't want to throw people under the bus because shit got too crazy and I got hemmed up and I made my own mistakes. I got caught up. My mind just wasn't thinking like that. My thing was, I wanted to try to make it as easy for my girls as I could. I wanted to stay there in the county jail for not no 10 years, but I want to stay there for a little bit because I knew I was never going to see my mom again. I knew that I wasn't going to see my family no more. I wanted to basically string them along the best I could, make it easy for them to accept the fact that I'm gone, man. You know what I mean? I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. I was already, in my mind, I was already kind of putting that free world out of my mind. I was already transitioning myself into accepting that I'm going to spend the rest of my life being around concrete, steel bars, and this is the life that I'm going to live out the rest of it. I'm not going to see birds no more. I'm not going to be able to walk down the street or walk into a store anymore. There's going to be no more beaches. None of that. Those things are all going to be memories, figments of my imagination, things from the past. Now, my life was going to consist of prison, being behind prison walls, hearing that familiar sound of handcuffs, doors locking, announcements on the intercoms, phones ringing, those sounds, and we've all been there. You guys know what I'm talking about. Those are familiar sounds, and they're ugly. They're sounds you never forget. When you're out there on the streets and you first get busted and you land in intake and you're sitting there and you're trying to digest the situation that you're in. If it's real bad, you already know it's fucked up. You're feeling sick, but you sit there at some point. At least I know for me, I go through this feeling of, it's just everything is surreal. So like, damn, I remember this, and this is an environment that I said I would never come back to, but it's fucked up. You're hearing the phones ring, the handcuffs, the gloves snapping, COs playing with their gloves, making those latex gloves snap, people puking on the floor, the different, the things that you see and smell in those type of environments. And it's an ugly reality. But I was trying to, in my mind, I was trying to come to grips with, this is how I'm going to spend the rest of my life. There's nothing I can do about it. What can I do about it? I did not know how to get there myself. I couldn't do it by myself. I knew that it was going to take, if there was any chance of ever me coming back home, I was going to have to change my way of thinking, for one, because I couldn't. It's not like I was able to say, you know what, I'm going to call these guys, I'm going to reach out to them, and I'm just going to tell them, okay, I'm ready to do it. I didn't know how to get there like that. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get myself over the hump because I felt like, you know what, that's not the way I was brought up. That's not the way that I was raised. Everything that I was taught from the time I was a little kid. I'm not talking about prison politics. I'm not talking about being a norteño. I'm not talking about the NF, the NR. I'm not talking about none of that stuff. I'm talking about, the things that your parents instill within you from the time that you're a kid. those are the things, the morals, the principles, the things that we learn not to do, the things that, are taught to us. This is wrong. You don't ever do this. So that's what I was struggling with. I felt like just even entertaining the idea to think about sitting down with these guys, it was hard to even sit there and think about it. I was like, man, what the fuck am I thinking about? I was conflicted, straight up. I was conflicted. And I struggled over the next couple of weeks of what do I do? What do I do? So I told you guys, the night that all this happened, when Spanky got on his bars and he acted like he was trying to spear me in front of the COs so that they could see it and basically walk me off the tier. Like the way everything happened, that was supposed to happen like that. No point, didn't come nowhere near me. So that told me that these guys really weren't trying to spear me. They were only doing it because they were told. But my point is that when all that happened and I was finally walked off the tier, like I said, the walk of shame. And at first they put me in a holding tank. They didn't take me straight to observation. So they put me in a holding tank. They walked me downstairs to the tunnels, put me in one of the court tanks. It was at nighttime, so it was, nobody was really down there. People that were coming into the jail, going through, intake and processing. But I was in a cell, and I was just like, damn, everything was registering at that point. And this is when classification tried to come at me. This is when they were like, hey, know what happened. We heard we're going to house you in an observation cell. But in the meantime, we reached out to Santa Clara County Specialized Enforcement Team, and they're coming up here to see you. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm not talking to nobody. I don't know why you guys reached out to them. Why, you guys think that just because this happened, that I'm just going to fall into this game. I'm not talking to nobody. And, with all due respects to the classification officers that worked in that jail, they tried to become the ones that would bridge the gap between me and this agency. They tried to mediate and put it in my head that these guys are righteous dudes. I understand, they probably came at you sideways and you're mad because of this and that and the phone calls. Damn right I am. This has been their plan. But you guys seem to think that just because all this happened, that, here I was going to come running off the tier and I was just going to start asking for them or start talking to them. Nah, it's not happening. I told them I don't want to talk to nobody. I just want to be housed. Just put me in my cell, man. I just want to be left the fuck alone. I was pissed off. I knew that I wasn't going to come out of this situation. I came out the first time by luck. That doesn't happen too often, But again, I'm not the type of guy that will sit back and just allow things to happen. I make things happen. I will, my mind was always working. Like, I'm not just going to sit here and let my career I'm not going to let it go like that. If there's anybody I can get at to try to get back on board, that's what I'm going to do because my heart was still in it. There's a lot of critics. I know that they're going to watch this and they're going to say, yeah, right. And I'm always going to get that. And that's okay. Everybody has an opinion, but don't nobody know, nobody knows what I was feeling. Nobody knows what I was going through walking in my shoes. Unless you've been there, you can't possibly know. I used to be that guy on the outside that used to, sit there and was always critical of cats that walked away, that dropped out. Never count yourselves amongst those that trash, them fucking weak motherfuckers that bow out, what I mean, crawl on their fucking stomachs and lick them fucking cops' boots, the ones that sell out and, sell their soul to the devil and work with them people. Never count yourselves amongst those types of broken men. And when you're active and you're doing your thing and you're feeling like, you know what, I'm dedicated, I'm loyal, nobody's ever gonna shake my resolve. I'm in this for life. I'm a real one, 10 toes down, wow, wow, wow. You know what I mean? Wow, 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 wow. Yada, 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 yada. That all sounds good. It all sounds good until you get put in a situation where the adversity is real. The adversity is real and it makes you think. You start to think about things. Well, what are my possibilities? What can I do? I've said it before. Those of you that have been in the mix like me, those of you that were out there running around in the streets, establishing regiments, getting involved in criminal activity out there, getting involved in real, I'm not talking about no nickel and dime robberies or no bullshit. I'm talking about some serious crimes I was committing out there, serious things I was involved in. When you're involved in the criminal element like that, or you're a part of a criminal organization like I was, and you're real with yourself, at some point you're out there, you're going to put your life in perspective. You're going to think about what you're doing. You know what I mean? Whether it's on a Sunday, you're watching football, you're just sitting there and you're thinking, what I'm doing, nobody lasts that long anymore. Everybody knows it. You're out there, you're functioning, you're a C. Either you're going to get killed out there or you're going to end up spending the rest of your life in prison. Nobody makes it that long no more. It just don't happen. Too many people cooperate. Too many people are telling out there. Law enforcement are too good at what they do, and eventually you either get arrested or somebody tells on you. Or, like I said, you get killed out there. But however it goes, you don't make it for that long. You're lucky if you make it for 10 years out there. That's a stretch. It just doesn't happen like that. How many times have you guys heard, you get a C that falls out the bay, he hits San Jose, or he hits, one of these major cities, Sacramento, Stockton, wherever. They get out there, they put a regiment together, they get a good 6 month to a year run, maybe 2 years, and then they're gone. You read about them in the newspapers. There's another indictment. Operation Safety Horse. Where do they get all these names at too, man? You guys trip off the names of these indictments. They try to make it to coincide with the name of the gang too. It's funny, man. But they come out with some crazy names. Nobody makes it that long no more. So at some point, if you're really being real with yourself, those that have been in similar situations like me, that have been out there, you're in the mix and you're on borrowed time. Eventually it's coming. All the things that were happening to me out there, the GPS tracking device, the shootout that I got into in Campbell, all the things that, were being put on my plate that I was going to become involved in, or I was going to have to make a choice. I knew I'm on borrowed time. Either I'm going to get cracked doing this, I'm going to get busted doing that, or just, they're already on my shit right now. So I'm not going to make it that much longer. What's going to happen when I end up in that situation? People can say they don't think about it, but if you're real with yourself, you have. And I can honestly tell you, when I thought about it, I was like, I'm going to write it. I'm going to write it out. I'm okay with spending my life in prison if that's what's in the cards. If that's what ends up happening, I'm okay with that. I've done so much time. I had done so much time at that point that, I was accustomed to it. San Quentin was like my second home. Pelican Bay was my first home. The streets were a vacation for me. But my home was in prison. That's the way I always looked at it. The streets were a vacation. That's a cold reality, and it's a cold way to look at it. But that's what it was. And I love my brothers so much that I thought about, what? I'm good, man. I'll be up there in the Bay as long as I got a TV, as long as I go to canteen, I get my honey buns. You don't get no honey buns in Pelican Bay, motherfucker. As long as I get my soups and my stale chips and, my little $35 draw, I think you can go more now. I'll be okay. I'm okay with that. Nobody wants to lose their freedom. I'm going to keep it real with you. Nobody does. No more women, no more, having nice things out there in life, no more being able to do things when you want to do them. All that shit is something of the past. But I was okay with that because, again, I made a choice. I committed myself to this organization. Unfortunately, things happened and I ended up sabotaging myself. I don't know. I know a lot of you probably have a hard time understanding that, and that's okay. If you haven't been in my situation or you haven't been in a similar situation, then you won't be able to relate to what I'm saying. But anyways, no matter which way it was going to happen. This was something I was struggling with for about a good 3 weeks. I was whooping myself in that cell. And again, when they try to have those people come up, I was like, nah, man, you know what I mean? Tell them, if you already told them to come up, I got nothing to say to them. Put me in my cell, man. You know what I mean? You guys don't need to be contacting those people and telling them to come up and see me. If that's something I want to do, I can do that. But I'm not talking to nobody. So they were like, okay, and if I remember right, that day, that night, they still came up and they still tried to talk to me. But I wasn't in the mood to talk to nobody. I was like, I ain't got nothing to say to you guys, man. You know what I mean? I just want to go to my fucking cell. I got too much shit going on. I was still kind of grieving over my wife. I just lost her. And, here I am back in this situation again. And I knew that things weren't going to get fixed this time. That's the hardest thing that I had to deal with, was that right there. Again, I told you guys how I would listen to my iPod. I would just sit there and listen to it, go over the phone calls. I mean, I was constantly thinking about it in the cell over and over, and all day I was thinking about it. I tried to work out and it was on my mind, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to finish these burpees, take a burp bath, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to listen to one call at a time and go through each one. And I'm going to sit there and I'm going to write notes and explain, look, this is why, I'm going to go through these phone calls, dissect them, analyze them, break them down, and when I get to where I'm going, look, this is why I said what I said. And if you listen to this, you can hear that over there. And if you listen to when I talk to my stepfather, you got my mom on there talking about this is what I need to do. But when she hands the phone to my stepfather, you can hear me clearly say, look, man, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to get down like that. I can't do it. These are my boys. And this is not, you taught me better than that. And I'm talking to my stepfather. And he was like, even though my mom and my girl sitting right there and they don't understand what he's saying, he's telling me, hey, you know what? I respect whatever choice you make. I respect whatever choice you make. And I'm telling him, like, they don't understand politics. They don't understand these politics. They don't understand what I committed myself to. And he's like, yeah, I know what you mean, so that they wouldn't detect what we were talking about. But I pointed all that out when I broke it down because I wanted, at least in my mind, at least right there, I was still thinking, you know what, I'm going to have to hunker down, go through court. And when I get up into the bay, I'm going to, this is all going to be part of, my defense right here. These are the phone calls and these are the notes that coincide with all the phone calls. And if you go through them, these are the things I said, why this was what was going on. So that was where my mind was at that point. Obviously things would, the next couple of weeks, whether things would change or not, who knows? But that's where my mind was at that point. Okay, I understand I'm not going to leave this county jail fucking active. I understand that. That's something I'm going to have to deal with. I can't do nothing about that now. I'm done with that anyway. I was pissed off. I felt like, again, I'm not playing the victim. That's not what I'm doing. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I just felt like I committed myself to this organization and I came through on my end. I did everything I was supposed to do. And here I am in a world of trouble because I'm trying to push this organization forward. I didn't get there in that county jail because I was committing crimes for myself. I'm running for the organization. I'm out there generating money for them. Least I can do is get some fucking the benefit of the doubt. That's all I ever asked for. Just give me the benefit of the doubt. I don't deserve that much. That's all I wanted. But, it was falling on deaf ears. It was falling on deaf ears. And at least until, I got to Pelican Bay, I understood that this is how it's going to be. These guys that are in this jail, and I'm not talking about the homies that were down there on Second East because I don't blame them. But, a couple of individuals in Pelican Bay, Lencho, some of the individuals that were directly involved in my situation, some of my co-defendants that helped fan those flames, like Pony. I was mad at Joe until Joe ended up on the other side. I'll talk about that later. But at that point, I was gunning for Joe. I was gunning for Joe. I was gunning for Sykes. And, a couple other individuals, and I felt like there was just homies that could have done a lot more, to support me in that situation. I would have done that for them. Loyalty is something that you cannot find no more. You can't buy loyalty. It's hard. It is hard to find loyalty in this world. That's just the reality of it. No matter how good you are to people, no matter how far you go, how to what extremes you go to prove your loyalty, it doesn't matter. This organization does not, they're not sympathetic to the things that, to my reasons, the reasons why I said what I said, because I was trying to pacify my girl. She was dying. They don't care about that, and it just, that it is what it is. That's what I committed myself to. I understood that in the beginning, and, nobody was going to change the rules for me. And again, when the bigger you are, the more status that you have, the longer you've been in the organization, the higher standards you're held to, because you know better. You've been around long enough to know better. You can't act like you didn't know better, or you're not going to get that pass. You're not going to catch a break. They're going to hold you to higher standards, and basically that's what happened. So I continued to listen to the calls. I continued to listen to them. I continued to write down things that I heard in the phone calls, for just to point out to other people that I knew were gonna, if not listen to them, they were gonna read the transcripts. And it was just that was the only thing that I had to answer to. There was nothing else. I didn't talk to nobody. I didn't sit down with anybody at that point. It was just the phone calls. So that's what I focused on for the last 3 weeks, or for the next 3 weeks while I was in the observation cell. So I don't remember exactly how long I stayed in that observation cell. I want to say it was around a good 4 months. I had plenty of time to break this shit up. 10 years, I want to say 5 months. So let's just say I stood there 5 months. Eventually, classification would come up one day out of nowhere, and they told me, you're going back to Little Max. And you guys remember, I had been back in Little Max before. I spent almost 2 years back there. That's where I was at when I started spearing, individuals back there to get out of that situation. That's when Dancing Bear was in South Max. So there I was, going back to Little Max. I never wrote my name on the wall, so I don't know why I kept going back to fucking the same cells, or the same, the same housing units. You guys ever heard that? That's a superstition I've heard before. If you write your name on a wall or on a bench or something, or but you're not supposed to do that in a jail, because they'll say if you write your name somewhere, you always return back. But my point is, I don't know why I kept going back to some of these same housing units, some of the same observation cells. There was only so many places that they could put me in that jail. That's probably what it was. Little Max, South Max, North Max, Second East, observation cells in Second East, observation cells in Third East. Those were the only ones. So that's where I kept bouncing around. Anyways, one day, classification came up. They told me I was moving to Little Max. And at that time, I told you guys previously that, Turtle, when they rolled Turtle up, that's where he was at. He was in Little Max. And that, if you guys remember, I believe it was last episode or the episode before that, a CO came over there when I was in that same observation cell and told me, hey, Martinez is over there. He sends his respects. And that's when I told him, you know what? Tell him it's all good. This is when I was still active in Double Red. And I told him, you know what? Tell him it's all good. I was buried before he said what he said. Tell him, I hope everything works out for him. Tell him don't worry about it. I'm not mad at him. So that's when he went back and he told him, and homeboy felt like I took 1,000 pounds off of his shoulders. Some people might not understand that. They might think because I was active, I shouldn't have said that. This was somebody that I had a friendship with. My thing is I didn't give a fuck. He told on me. So what? He told on me, and I was buried. I understood the situation he was in. He wanted to, they played him. Turtle wasn't the smartest dude. Streetwise, he was smart, and he knew how to make a lot of money. But he ended up hitting the banana in the tailpipe. They did him foul. he fell into that trap, but I understood he wanted to get back out there to his family, to his kids. And I just wasn't mad. I was like, you know what, bro, I sunk myself when they first kicked my door in. There were other people that told on me. So I just wasn't mad. But anyways, he was over there in Little Max, and this is where they were sending me to now. So I would end up running into him again. So that's where they would end up moving me back to Little Max. I moved over there, or I would move over there in a couple days. Let's just say that for the sake of this episode right here, because I'm going to go ahead and cut this one short right here. I got to do it. It's late as hell right now. This is the second video I put out, but at least I'm getting 2 videos out to you guys. When I make the next episode, I'll be in Little Max, so I'm going to move to Little Max. And then some things are going to happen over there. It's just, there's never a dull moment in these 10 years that I went through in that jail. Something was always happening, but it was always something bad. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Inner Demons, this episode 86. I'm going to try to get out a couple more stories to you guys tomorrow. There's a good one I want to get out to you guys. I'm going to work on it. Once again, I want to extend my appreciation to all those of you that have been supporting me. I see the comments. I'm going to continue to try to respond to as many as I can. If I'm not responding to all of them, it doesn't mean I'm not reading them. I go through them all. And like I said earlier in the last video, I'll go through my IG and I'll try to be better at answering a lot of you, in my Instagram as well. I'm terrible at answering, my Instagram or some of the questions that you guys ask me in my Instagram. But I'm going to try to do better at going in there and interacting with a lot of you guys. Anyways, I'm going to say it again. If there's any of you out there that have any stories about the Mexican Mafia, about the NF, tap in with me through my email, boxerparadigm@gmail.com. This is the way I'm going to start doing things. These stories that I'm going to be telling, I'm going to stay away from telling stories about a lot of these active guys. I'm going to kind of stay away from that stuff for a while. If you guys got stories about former Mexican Mafia members or things that have happened in the past, share those stories with me. Just get at me and let me know what kind of story you got, and I'll make an intelligent decision from, that point on. But tap in with me through my email. Again, boxerparadigm@gmail.com. Anyways, this is episode 86. I appreciate you guys for tapping in, especially those of you that are into the Inner Demon series. We still got a ways to go, so don't worry about it. Anyways, with that being said, enjoy your Friday. Be safe out there. It's your boy B, and I'm out.